Hello friends, welcome back to our channel Neet Biology Expert. I am Dr. Parveen, your biology professor. In this lecture series, we are studying about the class 12 biology, the first unit, reproduction in organisms. In this first chapter, this is our 7th lesson. This lesson is all about sexual reproduction. So let us study sexual reproduction in detail in this lecture series. So in this particular lecture, let us study about sexual reproduction. What is sexual reproduction and what are the phases of life cycle in an organism's life? Okay, so these are the things we are going to study in this lecture. Let's get started. So what is sexual reproduction? What is the definition for sexual reproduction? Sexual reproduction involves the fusion of male and female gametes to form a diploid zygote which develops into a new organism. This is the definition for sexual reproduction. Right. Let us see what is the meaning for this. So first you should know what is a gamete. What is a gamete? Gamete is the reproducing cell of organism. Okay. So we have somatic cell, that is body cells which makes our body organs, and we have reproductive cells. That reproductive cells is called gametes. And here during sexual reproduction, there must be a fusion of male and female gamete. Okay, so suppose let us take any organism. This is an organism having 2n, that is 2n number of chromosomes. So in order to make it n, to produce a gamete, this is a gamete. Okay, so you should know what type of cell division occur in this. What type of cell division occur? Yes, it is the reduction cell division, that is called meiosis. Okay, so meiotic cell division occurs thereby, for example, 46 chromosomes in 23 pairs will be there in the organism. It is reduced into 23 number of chromosomes. So this reduction division occurs by meiosis. So here n is the gamete. This is the reproducing cell of an organism. Right. On the other way around, if we have one female gamete and we have one male gamete, n plus n. Okay. So this makes 2n. Here this 2n is called zygote. Right. This zygote, this gamete n and they are haploid cells which has 23 chromosomes. Together it forms 46 chromosomes, which is the diploid zygote. So here what cell division occurs? Here this cell division is mitosis, mitotic cell division. This you must remember. Okay. So during sexual reproduction, what happens? The fusion of male and female gamete occurs which form a diploid zygote. This zygote develops into a new organism. Let us see some more detail in this picture. See, this is an adult male. This adult male has 2n number of chromosomes, and this divides by mitotically, and here it produces the haploid cell, that is the sperm cell. Okay. Similarly, this is an adult female having 2n number of chromosome. It divides again by meiotic cell division and it produces the egg cell which has haploid n number of chromosomes. So once these two n and n get fertilized, they form the zygote which is 2n. The zygote divided by mitotic division and new organism forms. Right. So this is the thing happens during the sexual reproduction. Let us see some characteristics of sexual reproduction. In order to tell an organism is exhibiting sexual method of reproduction, there must be some defined characteristics. Okay, so we have to know what are those characteristics organisms are showing during their sexual reproduction. The first one, it is usually biparental. What do you mean by biparental? Bi means two. So during sexual method of reproduction, there will be two opposite sex parents will be there, a male and a female. Okay, so they unite and produce the offsprings. So usually this is the way, but rarely in some organisms, for example some parasites, they have only one parent. The single parent will produce both the male and female gametes. That is a rare, but 99% in sexual reproduction, the parents will be there of opposite sex. Okay, so it is usually biparental. The second point is that gametes are always formed in sexual reproduction. Always gametes are produced. So I told you what are gametes. Gametes are the reproducing cells. So reproducing cells are needed to execute the sexual reproduction. Okay, so gametes are usually needed. They are formed in sexual reproduction. The third point is fertilization occurs. What is fertilization? The process of combining the male and female gametes, for example, the sperm and the ovum, to produce a single cell, that is called zygote. So we told no, the N, male gamete, N, a female sperm, they unite to form a 2N, zygote. So this is a cell. This is a zygote cell. Okay. So this process is called fertilization. The union of male and female gamete is called fertilization. So during sexual reproduction, fertilization definitely will occur, right? And the fourth important point is both meiosis and mitosis occur. We have seen, no? So both meiotic division will be there and mitotic cell division will be there during sexual reproduction. Here, the offsprings are genetically non-identical from the parents. So what is the meaning of this? For example, let us take asexual method of reproduction. Example for asexual method of reproduction is commonly bacteria does binary fission. So what happens during binary fission? If this is a bacteria, it divides into two equal halves and produces two daughter cells. These daughter cells are 100% identical to the parent. Everything, whatever the parent has, the mother cell has, it has been completely divided and given into two equal halves. Okay, so in asexual method of reproduction, they are 100% identical as the parent cell. But in sexual method of reproduction, they are not identical. They are different from the parents. Suppose you can take the example. You might have seen babies. They don't look like father. They don't look like mother. Rather, they will look like their grandparents or some other structures. Okay, so they are not identical from the parents. So this is important. And this sexual method of reproduction is a very complex, complicated process, not simple like binary fission. And it is a complex process and it is a slow process also. So it takes time. In order to form a baby, it needs 10 months. For animal, it takes more time. So like this, it takes long duration. Whereas in bacteria, if you see binary fission, in just 8 minutes, one bacteria gets divided into two bacteria, right, in equal. So it is very simple in asexual method of reproduction and it's very fast. But in sexual method of reproduction, the process is very slow and complicated. Okay, so these are the important points you should remember. Let us see again. What are the characteristics of sexual reproduction? Here, two parents should involve biparental. Always gametes should be formed. That is the second point. Fertilization should take place. And the meiotic and mitotic, both the cell division occurs. The parents are not identical or genetically differ from their offsprings. It is a complicated and slow process, right? Okay, let us see which organism does this sexual method of reproduction. So sexual method of reproduction is carried out by majority of plants, animals, fungi. Here animals include human being also. Okay. Asexual method of reproduction occurs in unicellular organisms like amoeba, like bacteria or a small fungi like this. But sexual method of reproduction occurs in higher plants, animals and also in fungi. So that means diverse organisms, they exhibit this sexual method of reproduction. What do you mean by diverse? These organisms have different morphology, different internal structure, different physiology. Simple, let us take example, compare an animal, compare a rabbit with a human being. The structure of rabbit is different. The external morphology and internal structure, physiology of rabbit is different compared to human beings. Okay. So what is physiology? Physiology is the study of internal organs, how the organs works, that is called physiology. Okay. Anatomy means structure of the organs. Physiology means how the organ works, that is called physiology. So physiology, everything differ. compared to animals and human beings, but both exhibit sexual method of reproduction. Okay, so despite all these animals, flowers, or fungi, despite they have different appearance or different physiology, they share the common pattern of sexual reproduction. What common features these organisms are sharing? They share the common life cycle stages. Life cycle stages. Okay. See, all these organisms, they have three stages in their life cycle. The first stage is called juvenile phase or vegetative phase. The second stage is called reproductive phase or maturity phase. And the third stage is called senescence phase. Let us study in detail what are these phases in this lecture. Okay. So, what is juvenile phase? Juvenile phase is also called as growth phase or growing phase. All organisms have to reach a certain stage of growth and maturity in their life cycle. Okay, so before they start to reproduce, this period is called juvenile phase. For example, see, this is a small baby born. This baby boy will grow into an adult. Okay, and then he will become an old man. Okay, so this stage, from the baby stage till this young stage, this period is called growth phase or juvenile phase. You understand? So a baby will not reproduce. In order to reproduce, he has to reach an young stage, an adolescent stage. Okay, so this growth phase is called juvenile phase. So here, when this occurs in animals, we call this as juvenile. Animals and human beings, we use the word juvenile. If this occurs in plants, we call this as vegetative phase. So vegetative phase means the growth phase in plants is called as vegetative phase. Okay. So remember, during this growth phase or during this juvenile phase, the organism will not reproduce because they are in the growing stage. Okay. Let us see with this picture. See, this is an egg, this is a sperm, and it fuses a zygote. The zygote grows into a baby. This baby is growing into a child. Okay, child. For example, some 6 years, 7 years old child. And this child grows into an adult, 13 years or 14 years adult. Okay, so in human being, this adolescent stage is where the reproduction starts in their life cycle. Okay, so this period from the birth of the baby till this adolescent phase, this whole phase is called as juvenile phase. Understand? So this whole phase is called as, this period is called juvenile phase. So until it is getting ready, the body is ready physiologically, psychologically, the organism gets ready to reproduce. This phase is called juvenile phase. So let us take an plant, for example. Plant, you are sowing a seed. Okay, then the plant starts growing, germination occurs, and the shoot grows, root grows. After some period of time, what happens? It attains a certain age. Okay, so this is called vegetative phase. This period from the seed till it starts flowering, this period is called the vegetative phase. Okay, so once they start flowering, it is a different phase. Second stage, before flowering, that phase is called the vegetative phase. So here, the end of the vegetative phase and the beginning of the reproductive phase can be easily seen in plants when they come to flower. This stage variation we could easily recognize, appreciate in plants. Once they start flowering, it is understood that the plant enters its second phase. That means its reproductive phase. Okay, so till that it is in their growth phase. That is called the vegetative phase. Okay. In plants, there are three categories we can divide the plants into: annual plants, biennial plants, and perennial plants, depending upon their life cycle. Okay, so let us see first the annual plant. What is an annual plant? The plant which completes its life cycle from germination to the production of seeds within one growing season and then it dies is called annual plant. What is this? Annual plants means the life cycle of the plant is only 1 year. So within that 1 year, it will germinate from the seed, it grows, it reaches its reproductive stage, it starts flowering and gives its product, okay, and then it dies. So this is a annual plant. Example, pea plant, rice, broccoli, maize, and carrot. These are all some example for annual plants. So the life cycle of the plant finishes in 1 year. Okay, so that's why you might have seen paddy reproducing paddy. When you cultivate paddy crop in 1 year, the cycle will be completed, the yield will be over. Okay, so the next year you have to start again from the seed. So this is annual plant. The second type of plant is biennial plant. Here, bi means two, binary fission. Bi means two. This plant has 2 years of life cycle, right? So here, the first year they grows. From the seed, it completely grows. It reaches its maturity during the first year. From the second year, they start its flowering. That means its reproduction starts. Okay, so 2 complete set of year it takes. So those plants are called biennial plants. Example: majority of the gardening plants, flowering plants, they are of biennial type. And if you see these crops like cabbage, onion, they are also biennial plants. Their life cycle completes in 2 years. First year, growth. Second year, reproduction. Okay. Here, the third category of plants is called perennial plants. So perennial plants are those which lives more than 2 years and even up to 100 years they grow. They are called perennial plants. In this perennial plants, it is very difficult for us to identify when their growth phase stops, when their flowering stages occurs. Like this differentiation of phase is little difficult in the perennial plants. For example, take this. This is a bamboo plant. The bamboo plant, they flower only once in their lifetime. They flower only once in their lifetime. Generally, after 50 to 100 years. See the lifespan of bamboo. It's very, very long living. 50 to 100 years. So during this time, only one time they will flower. They produce large number of fruits and they die. Okay. So here it is very difficult for us to differentiate these three phases in this kind of plants. And another very famous example is Strobilanthus kuntiana. This is the biological name for the very famous Kurinji flower. Kurinji flower. Okay, this is called Neela Kurinji. Kurinji flower, which we could see in the hill regions of Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. The flowers blooms only once in 12 years. So every 12 years, once only, we could see this beautiful purple blooming Kurinji flowers. Okay. So here also it is very difficult to clearly define when their vegetative phase starts, reproductive phase starts, and their senescence phases it arrives like this. Okay. So this is little complicated in the perennial plants. Let us move on to the next phase of an organism, that is called reproductive phase. This reproductive phase is also called as maturity phase. What do you mean by maturity phase? The organism reaches its maturity. Now it is ready physiologically and psychologically to reproduce. Their growth is over. Now it's ready to reproduce. This phase is called reproductive phase. So in animals, the juvenile phase is followed by morphological and physiological changes prior to the active reproductive behavior. So in animals and human beings, the juvenile phase is finished. Now they are ready for the next phase, that is called reproductive phase. So it is the period when the organism enters active sexual stage. Here, this reproductive phase is of variable duration in variable organisms. So some organisms, the period is different. In another organisms, the period is different. Okay. So the reproductive phase is of variable duration in different organisms. So what is important in this is, in these organisms, the female undergo some sort of hormonal cycle that occurs in its ovaries that makes the female ready for the sexual reproduction. Okay. So the female of placental mammals exhibit some cyclic changes periodical changes in the activities of the ovaries and accessory ducts as well as hormones during the reproductive phase. So those cyclic changes occurs in the female organisms makes it fit or ready to enter into the reproductive phase. So let us see what are those. These cyclic changes we call as menstrual cycle and estrous cycle. So menstrual cycle, what do you mean by menstrual cycle? Menstrual cycle occurs in primates. Primates means monkeys, apes and human beings. Menstrual cycle, this occurs in the female organism of monkeys, apes and human beings. Okay, so during this stage, the organism undergoes some sort of changes in their reproductive organs. Okay, and then they are ready for the reproduction. We will explain what all this. And second one is called estrous cycle, or some people say this oestrus cycle. What is estrous cycle? Where it occurs? Estrous cycle occurs in non-primate mammals. See here primates, here non-primates, like cow, sheep, rat, deer, dog, tiger. In these animals, in these female animals, this estrous cycle occurs. Okay, this estrous cycle is also called as heat cycle. So during this stage, this animal is sexually active and ovum is released. They want to reproduce or they want to copulate during this stage. Okay, so let us first see what is a menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle is a periodic cycle which occurs in the human beings and monkeys. Okay, this menstrual cycle is having three stages. The first stage is called menses, the second stage is called proliferative stage, and third stage is called secretory phase. Three phases occurs in the menstrual cycle of a female every month. That's why it's calculated from 0 to 28 days. Okay, so three stages occurs during these days. So what happened during these cycles? You know endometrium. What is endometrium? Endometrium. Endometrium is a pear-shaped organ which is in the uterus. It is the internal lining of the uterus. Okay, if this is the uterus of a female, okay, so this lining is called endometrium. In this endometrium only the baby will grow. The baby fixes in the endometrial wall and it starts growing. Okay, so there will happen, it happens some cyclic changes in this endometrium wall. Okay, so that leads to this menstrual cycle. This endometrial changes is very important for pregnancy and also for this menstruation in the female. Okay, so three stages occurs. The first stage is called menstrual phase. What happens in the menstrual phase? For example, see if this is the endometrium, what will happen? Blood flows in the last few days of the cycle. We know for the female, after they attain the maturity for about in 13 years, what happens? They enter into the menstrual phase. Okay, so what happens? Blood oozes out in the last few days, 3 to 5 days, blood releases out. Okay, so why blood releases out? Because the broken endometrium is passed out. Here the endometrial wall, they will be small ruptures, so those will come out along with the blood. Okay, so during this stage the female does not permit copulation. The woman, the girl will not permit or will not be ready for sexual reproduction during this menstrual period because it's bleeding. During that time she is not ready to copulate. Okay, this is the first stage. The second stage of the menstrual cycle is proliferative phase. Proliferation means growth. So see here, first the endometrium ruptured, so there will be some damage in the endometrium. In the second phase, what happens? This endometrium, all the ruptured cells get filled. Estrogen, what is estrogen? The female sex hormone causes the lining of the endometrium to grow. So the estrogen helps to completely grow or line up the endometrium again. Okay, this is the second phase. And the third phase of the menstrual cycle is the secretory phase. So what happened here? The ruptured follicle closes after the egg gets released and forms corpus luteum, and they produces more amount of progesterone. More amount of progesterone is produced in the corpus luteum. That is the third stage. So like this, three stages occurs in a female during this menstrual cycle. It occurs in a female like primates and human beings. Okay. The other way around, we have the estrous cycle. What is estrous cycle? They occur in the non-primates like cow, sheep, rat, deer, dogs, and tiger, female. Okay. So, for example, the time period differs for all these animals. Look at this. For cow, usually it takes 12 to 24 hours. So, what happened exactly here? You should remember, estrous cycle is not menstrual cycle. Both are completely different. Here, estrous cycle is not menstrual cycle. Okay. First thing is, blood does not flow. See, during menstrual cycle, the female will have blood leakage. Here in the estrous cycle, no blood comes out, no blood flow. Second difference is the endometrium gets broken and released during menstrual cycle. Here estrous cycle, endometrium gets broken, but it gets reabsorbed. It won't release out. Okay, this one. And third important point is the female permit copulation only in the estrous cycle. So we have seen during the menstrual cycle, a woman or a lady is not ready to copulate. But here, during estrous cycle only, this animal is ready to be sexually active. It wants to copulate. Okay. So these are the important points you should remember. The differences between menstrual cycle and estrous cycle. So these two cycles occurs in primates and non-primate animals. Right? Right. Okay. So on the basis of breeding, here we are classifying the animals into two broad groups. So one are called seasonal breeders and another are called continuous breeders. Seasonal breeders means the animals which live in wild condition or natural environment, they want to reproduce only during a particular season. For example, say some animals reproduce only in summer, some animals reproduce only in winter, some in only in rainy seasons. So during a particular season over the year, they want to reproduce. They are called seasonal breeders, right? In other seasons, they don't reproduce. What are the examples? Frog reproduce during rainy seasons. Lizard, birds, deers. So like this, these are the seasonal breeders. Some animals, they reproduce continuously throughout the year. So throughout the year, any month, any season, they are ready to reproduce. They are called continuous breeders. Okay, they reproduce active throughout their reproductive phase. Example: honeybees, poultry, all sort of cow, goat, sheep, hen, ducks, all these poultry, rabbit, and here you can include human and monkey also. Okay, they are all continuous breeders. So human can reproduce at any month throughout the life. Okay, whenever they are in the active reproductive phase, they can reproduce at any period of the year. Okay, so they are the example for the continuous breeders. And here one point you should remember in important, in both plants and animals, why these changes occurs, how they reproduce, it is through the hormones. Hormones are responsible for the transition of the phases. We said three phases, right? So for these phases, hormones are responsible. Okay. Along with the hormones, interaction between hormones and environmental factors regulate the reproduction process. So hormones plus the environmental factors regulates the reproduction in the plants and animals. Okay, so we have seen these three phases so far. See here, the first phase is juvenile phase. For example, a baby is born, and the babies reach up for about 13 to 14 years of age. Okay, here 0 years. So this time period, the baby is growing no till it reaches 13 to 14 years, say when they go to 8th standard. Okay, Eighth standard, what happened when they go to eighth standard? The boy or the girl will attain um, maturity, okay, adulthood. So this phase is called juvenile phase. This duration from the birth till they reach 13 to 14 years, this is called juvenile phase. Okay, reproductive phase, second phase, they remain for some period of time, for example, say about maximum 50 years also, 50 years also, and man can reproduce. Okay, so this period is called reproductive phase, where they give birth to young man. And after that, after 60 or 65 years, they reach their old age. So this is called senescence phase. Okay, these are the three phases. Here you should remember, juvenile phase means in animals and human. Same, if you if it occurs in the plants, we call this as a vegetative phase. Okay, let's move on to the third phase, that is called senescence phase. Senescence means the process of growing old. So we are growing old. Okay, so after some period of time, our reproduction stops. Then we will reach our old age. Okay, this age is called senescence phase. Senescence or biological aging is the gradual deterioration of functional characteristics. So what happened? Slowly, the physiological thing and even psychologically, the organism stops reproducing. Okay, so this is called senescence phase, and finally it attains the death. Death of an organism will be there in the end of the senescence phase. You understand? Right. So let us revise what we studied in this lecture. In this lecture, we studied what is sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction means there must be a union of male and female gametes to form a zygote. Okay. So here both mitotic and meiotic cell division will be there. What are the three phases in an organism's life cycle? Juvenile phase or the growth phase, that is the first phase. Reproduction phase or maturity phase, that is the third phase, second phase, and senescence phase, that is the third phase. Okay. Then we studied what is a menstrual cycle and a oestral cycle. Menstrual cycle occurs in the primates. Oestral cycle occurs in the non-primates. Okay. So what are the difference between these two cycles? We studied, right? So in this sexual reproduction, our next lesson will be on the events of fertilization. Pre-fertilization, fertilization, post-fertilization, like this three stages of events will be there. This we are going to study in detail in our next lecture. Okay, I hope you understand this lecture. If you like this lecture, please share with your friends and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Neet Biology Expert. Meet you in another lecture. Till then, take care.